Yes, yes, I have him locked away, trapped in my game. Dance for me, Simon, dance. Wait, what do you mean I'm recording? Hello, my fireflies, and welcome back to the Cyan Firefly. It's me, Lyiat, here with special guest Honeydew of the Yogscast. Say hello to everybody, Honeydew. Well, okay, he's not actually here, but I do have the avatar representing him. Zeal Games has actually decided to give a shout out to Simon, aka Honeydew, in their game by including the ability for their dwarves to just randomly be named Honeydew from time to time. So it's really nice to see a company do that for a YouTuber. I will say that on top of actually appearing in this game, Simon did actually do the voice work for one of Zeal Games' previous titles called Dwarves! ! He did all the tutorial voices in there, so go check that out if you're interested. I actually enjoyed Dwarves quite a bit. I don't think I did a review on it, so I may have to look into that. Anyway, moving on. This particular game is called A Game of Dwarves, and it's a pretty interesting one. Now, for my normal fans, you might be realizing by now that this actually isn't my normal form of reviewing games. I generally do it live as I go. However, with this particular game, I ran into a couple of bugs that prevented that, and I'll explain them later. But for now, let's go over the normal things, shall we? Now, the first thing I want to bring up is the options menu. It has a couple of things that I like, and it has a couple of things I really don't like. First of all, fully rebindable keys. It's a pretty sad day when I actually have to applaud a gaming company to actually include rebindable keys in a PC game. However, these guys did it, and that's really cool. It's nice to see somebody actually putting in that functionality in a game in an era where that is actually kind of rare. Which, again, is really irritating, but hey, whatever. We do have it here, and thank you very much. However, the one annoying thing about that is that you don't let me rebind the F9 key, which I found out the hard way. The F9 key removes your HUD. Now, I also have another key bound to F9, and that's my recording fraps button. So whenever I wanted to stop recording, or whenever I wanted to start recording and I wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing, I would literally actually cause the HUD to disappear. Yeah, not something that actually works all that often, but there you go. Anyway, as far as other options go, you have resolution options, VSync, whether or not you want it to be full screened or not. I actually can't run it in full screen, and I'll tell you why later when I address the bugs. There's also a graphics options, which, See, I like that they have graphics options in the game, but the problem is they don't mean anything. You have low, medium, and high. They don't actually tell you what they affect. They don't tell you what their filtering is. They don't tell you what their anti-analyzing is. They don't tell you individual things, so you can't really customize it all that much to your preference. Now, of course, I have it on high because, you know, I have a very decent system. I have a very good graphics card, very good CPU, all that sort of stuff, so default it all to high. And then under gameplay, they have languages. That's not really what sounds like should be under gameplay, should it? No. I do like the option that you can select from multiple languages, but the fact that it's under gameplay, you know, gameplay, honestly, to me, sounds like where I should be choosing difficulty options, stuff like that. This game has two different modes of gameplay. It has the single-player campaign, and then it has the custom game. Now, it has no multiplayer functionality whatsoever, so you can do this campaign, which is basically like story mode. You get certain stuff at certain times, you have to play through objective-based quests, and you have to do this whole 9 yards. Basically, the plot of the entire game is that the dwarves used to be a massive empire. They were friendly with most people, and then out of nowhere from the north, humans invaded, and they did all sorts of things with magic, and they really screwed the dwarves up. So now you want to take your clan and basically take that land back for yourself. You are the prince, you are the son of the king, and you have to prove to your father that you actually can lead a clan of your own. So there you go. That's the plot line. However, what we're focusing on today is the custom mode, because the custom mode actually has everything that the campaign mode has, except for the story-driven quests. So there really is no reason for me to show you the campaign, because, hey, it's basically the custom mode with a storyline. So, the custom mode, you basically select a few basic parameters at the start, and then it randomly seeds you a map. And that map, basically, you have to find 4 crystals on the map, and you have access to everything in the game in order to accomplish that goal. So, that's your standard fanfare when it comes to these kinds of games. So, what do you have to do? Well, this is actually kind of a dwarf management simulator. 6 minutes in, I really haven't even told you that yet. So, like I said, it's a dwarf management simulator. You take control of a small clan of dwarves, which I believe you can see right here. Like I said, I'm doing this all in post, so I don't actually have the footage right in front of me as I'm talking. You have to take this small clan and lead them to prosperity, as well as finishing the particular goals of the level. Now, in custom mode, like I said, you have to find 4 crystals deep underground. Now, you use your individual clansmen, your individual dwarves, to actually accomplish this goal. And there are several different classes of dwarves to observe. Now, of course, the most important dwarf in the level is the prince. Now, every single level starts with a prince. You automatically get a prince. If the prince dies, well, that's game over. That's actually how you lose the map. At this point in time, I haven't discovered any other failure options. It just seems to be if you lose your prince. Now, there are other types of dwarves which you can respawn. They are basically the worker dwarves, the dwarves that serve the prince. I can't really use the word worker because that refers to a specific class. Now, I will discuss them all for you and explain them briefly. First of all, there is the dwarfling. Now, the dwarfling is basically useless. His entire purpose is that he wanders around the fortress, eating and sleeping. He wastes resources, he does absolutely nothing to really benefit you. Now, why would you want these? Well, the interesting thing about dwarflings is that they slowly gain experience over time. They kind of absorb it through watching other dwarves. And this slowly increases their level. Now, at any given point in time, you can take a dwarfling, select it, and give it a class. Give it a specialization, as you were. So you can now take this dwarf and make it into any of the other types of dwarves. And it keeps the experience that it occurred over time. The advantage to this is that it doesn't actually have to do any work to actually level up, which is pretty good. The dwarves actually don't gain a whole lot of experience while working. It can take quite some time to level them up, so it's pretty advantageous to just let a dwarfling wander around the entire fortress and gain a bunch of levels really quickly. Now, using the other kind of dwarves is really where the whole strategy thing comes in. Now, you have several different types, starting with, I guess we'll start with the workers. Now, the workers are basically farmers. What they do is you have this thing called a fertilization stone, which you have to put in fertile soil. Now, once you do that, all the fertile soil around it starts glowing. Now, that's where you can plant various different things, such as food, wood, growing plants, and ale-producing happiness plants. I don't know, it's weird as hell, but I didn't develop the game, Zeal Games did. Anyway, so these workers now, you can designate them to go to this fertilization stone and harvest the things that are attached to it. So that's really what the workers do in a nutshell. They're pretty basic. Next up is the crafter dwarves, or craftsmen, or craft dwarves, whatever you really want to call them. But they're basically the builders. Anytime you place something down that needs to be constructed, the crafter dwarves run up and whack it with their hammer a couple of times, maybe drink a couple of cups of beer or mugs of beer and smoke on their pipes a little bit, and voila, you have a new banquet table or a new chest or what have you, whatever you really want. They're a pretty simple class to understand. After that, you have the miners like Honeydew there. Hello, Honeydew. Oh, you're a little tired? Okay, you go to sleep now. You go nappy buys. Anyway, so miners are, again, pretty simple. They basically mine designated areas. They're pretty important, however, because they're the only way that you can gain certain resources. Basically, any resource but food and wood require the use of miners. As they mine through blocks, they pick up whatever resource was in the area, and then they continue onward. Their AI is a little bit dopey. They like to run around in circles when enemies are nearby. I'm not sure about the AI of the other particular classes because I haven't run them into any orcs and goblins, but minor dwarves typically do run into them quite frequently, and they just lose all sense. I previously had another playthrough where I had a different Honeydew who just kept running back into the same orc over and over again while my entire army was trying to kill the thing. It was a pretty powerful orc too. It was like level 14 or something. So he took quite a few punishing hits just because he was an idiot and didn't think to run away. But moving right along, we also have researchers. Researchers are pretty interesting. Their entire purpose is to basically go up to a research bench. You have to build one with a crafter, and then they have to basically sit there and concentrate and do research, which gives you research points, which can be used to improve your technology. You can purchase different types of buildings, you can purchase, I shouldn't say buildings, different kind of constructions, you can make beds softer, you can enhance the ability of your military, you can add different levels of specialization, all sorts of interesting stuff. Now, speaking of the military, that brings us to the final type of dwarf, unless I've forgotten anyone? Can't think of anything else. So, you got the warriors. Now, the warriors split into two different classes. So basically, you make your basic warrior, and then you, with research points, can unlock different specializations. Those specializations go to the fighter and the spear thrower, or the warrior, or whatever it is. So the warrior is quite a bit more tanky. They've got a little bit harder hitting, but they have to fight up close and personal, whereas the spear thrower can attack from range, and then you can later on get more specialization. You can upgrade them again. You can get a very heavy tank kind of guy, a berserker who punches people with their fists, so he's advanced DPS. Then you got a ranged guy who has a crossbow, he can shoot more often, and then you have a explosive guy who I think can hit people in an area. So it's pretty good to diversify your military. I have basically one of each in this particular custom playthrough. You can probably see them killing a couple of orcs or some spiders or whatever right now. Depends on what footage I actually managed to pick up. So that's basically it for the kind of dwarves you have, and that's kind of the game in the nutshell. That's really all there is to it. Manipulate all these dwarves to grow your fortress, get more resources, build some interesting things. You can make traps, you can make sculptures, you can do all sorts of really fun, neat stuff. You can do some advanced builds to make everything look really cool. It's I really don't want to call it a sandbox, but you're basically free to approach it however way you want. Now here's the bad stuff. So this game suffers from a number of different bugs. I've had all sorts of interesting problems in dealing with this game. First of all, it seems to be very poorly optimized. Now, I have a really decent computer. I have a GTX 580 NVIDIA graphics card, and I have a quad-core i7 Intel processor. They're pretty hefty. I also have a decent amount of ROM, a decent amount of disk speed, so whatever have you. I've got a pretty decent computer. Yet, whenever I try to run this game in full screen, or if I try to run this game with fraps, it basically slows the entire thing down, and it causes this weird stutter in the game. Every once in a while, everything will just freeze for a few seconds, and then it'll go on like absolutely nothing happened. I really don't know. And the thing is, when it does that, it also screws up my audio. My audio will halt for a second. It will not know what I said. Like, for instance, if I say the ant, it'll come out with something like the ant. Yeah, it's really, really, really strange. I don't exactly know what's going on with that. It's something that they really need to look at. And there's also weird animation problems, some of which I got some footage of, if I can find it. There's a guy who just like stopped walking and started floating across the fortress. So it didn't look like he was moving at all. It looked like somebody was like pulling him along on wheels. It was pretty funny. They also have some issues with dwarves getting stuck in midair. I didn't exactly have that one, but I replicated it by putting a guy on a staircase, and he just kind of floated above the staircase, and he wouldn't walk anywhere. So, I don't know. Hopefully I can get some of them to watch the video so they can address these issues. But really, it kind of limits my enjoyment when I run into bugs like this, especially the one with the floating in the air. I ran into it in a very big way earlier, where I had a bunch of orcs who were charging up into my base, and I tried to drop all my dwarves in, and they were dropped like 2 Z levels above them, and they literally just watched the orcs run up towards my fortress. Luckily, the teleportation tool recharged before they could do any lasting damage, but it was a big pain in the butt. So, do I recommend this game? Well, I do, but I don't at the same time. I can see how a lot of people would really like this game. I am not personally one of them, and there is a reason for that, and that reason is called Dwarf Fortress. Now, Dwarf Fortress is a game by Toady, the Toady one, and it's a free game that is much like this, and it's been around for quite a while. Dwarf Fortress is a roguelike dwarf management simulator, really, and it's got very, very, very basic limited graphics. It's all in ASCII. If you don't know what those are, well, go look them up, because I'm not going to bother explaining them here. But basically, this game is extremely advanced for what it is. It completely custom makes an entire world for you to play in, and you have to select a specific point in the world that you want to actually make your fortress based on the resources that are available in that region, and you basically build an entire story from here. All sorts of weird, wacky things can happen in this game. The combat system is visceral. You don't have any control over it, but it is crazy visceral. You can see all sorts of crazy things happening. I once had a dwarf bite a goblin and I think he like bit off his toes or something, and it sent the goblin's like pinky toe flying off during the fight. It was the stuff that can happen in that game. It just brings a smile to my face even now. But this game has so many ridiculous mechanics that all interlock and work together in such a way that you can do such spectacular things. And a Game of Dwarves really lacks the depth that that game has. And Dwarf Fortress is a free game. Now, I understand why a Game of Dwarves doesn't have those extreme, ridiculous mechanics, and that's because Dwarf Fortress doesn't have any graphics to speak of. Again, it's all in that ASCII style. So he can do really, really, really ridiculous things and not have to worry about graphical fidelity. Not to mention, it's a free game, so he works on it on his spare time. A Game of Dwarves, on the other hand, has to appeal to a much broader fan base. It has to appeal to people who are not looking for a ridiculously anally difficult game. Dwarf Fortress is literally made to screw you over. You are not supposed to... There is no winning condition in that game. The entire concept behind it is losing is fun. They actually coined that term, as far as I'm aware. A bunch of different companies have been using it lately. It's kind of one of the modus operatis behind XCOM, for instance. All of you have been following my XCOM footage, and I'm losing soldiers left and right, but I'm still having a good time playing that game. But where was I going with that? But yeah, Dwarf Fortress, I just feel is the better game, and a bunch of games lately have been trying to capitalize on the popularity of Dwarf Fortress. Towns is another example that's really trying to be Dwarf Fortress. They also have Zeal Game's previous title, which I mentioned earlier, Dwarves, ! That also was really trying to be Dwarf Fortress. But none of these games can really pull it off. The other game that a Game of Dwarves is really trying to be is a game called Dungeon Keeper. Now, Dungeon Keeper was a dungeon simulator. You were basically the overseer or the overlord or whatever you want to call it of this dungeon, and you had minions, and you had to build and manage your dungeon and keep your minions happy, as well as attacking the heroes that ventured into your realm. So it's got a bit of this and a bit of that, but again, it's not really as good as either of them, which is really disappointing. I was kind of hoping a bit more out of this title. It's really interesting for what it is, and I really think people should take a look into it, but it's just not for me. I'm really sorry, but that's just the fact of things. So you can check it out on Steam if you're interested in it. If you're interested in it. What are the prices for that game? Unfortunately, I didn't bring my notes with me. Just give me one quick second here. Sorry, I had to go all the way to the Steam page for it. It's $9.99 American. I don't know what it is in other currencies, but, sorry, I haven't looked up the secret of figuring out the prices in other currencies, so sue me. But yeah, it's $9.99 American. It has, some DLC for it already, some free, some not. I believe the only DLC up there right now is their Halloween DLC. It's 99 cents. Yeah, before I go, it actually has an in-game menu right at the beginning. I probably should have showed you guys this. That allows you to download DLC right from the game. So you can download the Halloween pack, you can download these other free packs pretty much at will, and they have added some interesting stuff into it. So please do take a look. I'm not quite sure myself about the paid DLC because it doesn't really seem to offer much that the free DLC does offer. I mean, it's added a new statue, it's added some nice decoration stuff, but really the free DLC does the exact same thing and it's free. So it's really up to you guys whether or not it's worth it, but that's really all I have to say about this title. So for now, this has been Lyiat and Simon from the Yogscast with a Game of Dwarves. I'm gonna be off now to go diggy some more holes. See you later, Fireflies.